Like, I hate this guy already. I hate him. everyone. Is that on? Good evening, everyone. If you could grab your seats, that would be great. Hi, everybody. We've got a live stream audience that's waiting to join, so we'll try and get started now. Oh, okay. It's good? Okay. 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 Bruce, are we ready to go? Okay. Hi, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to the DCA. I'm Amy Bell, the Executive Director. I know we got some hounds out in the foyer that are anxious to have their moment. Welcome to the final event of our Darien Neighbors Global Players Speaker Series. By participating tonight, whether you're here in person or via live stream, you're helping to support the DCA's fundraising efforts and our wonderful nonprofit mission, which is nearly 100 years old. We're proud to be the place in our community where people gather, give, and learn. We're a gathering place for programs like this, for DCA groups that have a shared interest or passion, or as a venue for a rental event. We give through our DCA College Scholarship Awards to Darien High School graduates, our thrift shop volunteers who help us serve a vital need in our community, and our bird sanctuary, our 4-acre contribution to open space in town. And we learn from outstanding guest speakers and instructors, and also from each other. Other organizations may provide event space, or they give grant awards, or deliver programming. The DCA is unique in that we do all three of these things, and we do so without any funding from the town because of strong community support from people like you. Thank you. I'd also like to thank Jeff DeMayo, Audiovisual Services, and our live stream production partner, DAF Media, and their Darien High School student volunteers and adult leaders. DAF Media is a joint venture between the Darien Athletic Foundation and the Darien Foundation. And thank you as well to the generous local businesses and organizations who are sponsoring our series. Our platinum sponsor is John M. Glover Insurance Agency. Our gold sponsor is BMW of Darien. Our silver sponsors are A Little Something White Bridal Couture, Connecticut, Connecticut Community Bank, and Janine Tinkin with Houlihan Lawrence. Our bronze sponsors are the Darien Police Association, Hollow Tree Self-Storage, PG Properties, and Nancy Dock with Brown Harris Stevens, as well as Holly and David Hawes with Compass, Connecticut. All right, we've got a short video from our platinum sponsor, John M. Glover Insurance Agency.
The celebration of tradition and trust.
Tom Arrix founded Get Joy in 2018 with a mission to unleash wellness for dogs by offering fresh and nutritional dog food products directly to consumers. Its success has benefited from Tom's experience as co-founder and managing partner at Adjacency Partners, a business advisory firm, and as the Vice President of Global Marketing Solutions for North America at Facebook. Tom graduated from the University of New Hampshire's Peter T. Paul College of Business and Economics with a bachelor's degree in economics. He grew up in Connecticut and lives in Darien with his wife, 4 children, and golden retrievers, Theo and Eddie. Yeah.
Of course. Come here, Ed.
Tom will be in conversation with Charlie Hannigan, Managing Director, Oak Hill Advisors. Charlie was a longtime resident of Darien, where he and his wife Megan raised 3 daughters. As new empty nesters, except for their golden retriever Brady, they recently moved to Rowayton. Charlie and his family are active participants and supporters of the local community, including his children's involvement with Post 53 and Darien Depot.
Get up.
Charlie has been on the board of directors of Domus Kids for almost 20 years, where he serves as head of development and oversees various fundraising initiatives. At Oak Hill Advisors, he shares responsibility for new business development and client coverage. He earned a BA from the College of the Holy Cross. Our special guests enjoyed their own distinguished careers in fetching, romping, tail wagging, nuzzling, and napping, and perhaps some rug chewing or digging in the backyard when nobody was looking. One writer describes their breed this way: Golden Retrievers are right-side type B dogs, imaginative, mellow, enemies of routines, quirky, fun-loving, and full of surprises. You'd want a Labrador to handle your money, but you'd want a Golden to throw your party.
Yeah. Oh, shocker. Shocker. Spoiler alert.
Yeah. Ah, okay. A couple of hours into the festivities, they're the ones wearing the lampshade. So let's get the party started. Please welcome Tom, Charlie, Brady, Eddie, and Theo.
Thank you, Amy. I'm not sure we even need to, this is like a party. We just have a cocktail party.
And I'm not sure either
There
one of
goes
us
Theo.
need microphones because we've been known to be 2 of the
Yeah,
loudest guys in
for the
town.
record, Get Joy is not a dog training company.
Right.
It never will be, so.
Well, thanks for everyone for coming out. I'm sure you're all here to check out my interviewing skills, but I'll be doing little talking, and we'll ask Tom some pressing questions that we all want to know.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So obviously you're probably familiar with Tom's background, but it didn't begin at Facebook. It obviously started much earlier. And so can you tell us a little bit about, after college, how did you get into the media advertising business and some of the things that you learned along the way?
It was totally by default. I went to Australia much to our father's dismay, after college to coach and play lacrosse. And after about 6 months, our dad was like, when are you coming home? And I'm like, well, not until like October. And he goes, that's the wrong answer. So I ended up coming home and interviewing. I picked a field that was totally not for me, which was the financial field. And I had a bunch of interviews. And I was in my last interview through a great connection through a friend of the family at LF Rothschild, which has been defunct since 1987. And the guy I was interviewing with came out and said, can you come back and or call me in like a couple weeks? And like they were done in about a matter of days. So I ended up taking a job at Chase Manhattan with Liz
Wow.
in their private banking group in Midtown Manhattan.
Just
the same building where my brother.
banker that shouldn't be in finance.
Well,
That's
she
really
was
good.
like on the smart side. I was on the custody side. She was on the trust and estate side. So, but I eventually got into the media business through Turner Broadcasting, where guys like Trey and tons of others made a great career, and it was just an amazing environment where Ted Turner was very much a part of the fabric of the company. It had this like gravitas where Turner would create assets and channels with the acquisitions of, say, like the MGM library. He created TNT and all these really cool environments. And then I kind of went to the dark side in 1999 and jumped into the digital world with CBS Sportsline. My boss at the time had moved over to Sportsline, and I thought it would be an amazing opportunity to sit there and get television experience and then this digital experience, which no one really knew what was going on. I made a bad decision because I joined a company that was already public. And if you remember back in the day of like 1999, everybody was, like pets.com would go from $0 to like $500 and people were making a ton of money. But our company went from 82 to like $1
So
but
you joined at the peak and then you left at the trough.
Yeah, I don't know. It's probably fairly telling. But I loved it. It was so fun. It was based in Fort Lauderdale. I learned a ton. I worked really closely with the CBS Sports Group. So we did a lot of cross-platform stuff. So we would work with the sports group and do things that they would do on air, and we'd pull them into a digital experience. So my brother Chris's friend really was the one that kind of changed everything. Pete Steinle, back in 2006, I was at Univision at the time, and obviously my Spanish was a little lacking. But Pete Steinle had called and said, would you be interested in this company that we're recruiting for? He was with Kindred Partners, which is a really great firm. And I said, sure, what's the company? And he said, Facebook. And I knew a few of the guys from the industry already at Facebook, and I just thought it was almost like MTV back in the 80s. So back in like 1980 to 85, 86, MTV had this sense of like culture, and it was about music, and it was a really like teen demographic. So it was, 18 to 34. It had this really edgy kind of programming vibe to it. And Facebook was the same thing. So it was only for college kids and high school kids. And at the time, I finally, I got the job, took the job in the summer of 2006. And it was a tiny company. So it was, it's 4+ billion people today that are using Facebook, 2 billion every day that are on the platform. When I joined, there was just shy of 8 million people.
Wow.
So
and how many employees? And
there was 100 employees.
Right. And when you were faced with this potential move, obviously for a young startup company that no adult had ever heard of, because it really existed.
I think you were the
college
first. I think you were the first friend to actually join.
Right. Yes.
And your customer number one.
Right. Yeah.
Right. We're eventually going to get back to Hanny.
Right, yeah.
This will be about Hanny at some point.
It was really weird because
Hang tight.
Megan looked and said, "What the hell are you doing on Facebook?" She thought it was like Match.com or something. And I said, "No, Tom just joined this company, and I'm trying to be supportive." But that must have been, that wasn't an obvious success story, right? As you think about where you were in your life, your career, living in Darien with children, startups or young companies don't always or often work. So how did you weigh the risk reward of making that move?
One, I'd never done a startup, and it was only about 18 months old when I joined. So that was kind of the initial driving force. The second one was the people. So a lot of the people who were already there had been a part of some really fascinating companies, like an Amazon, and one guy who was a head of legal ended up running for Attorney General for California, Chris Kelly, and everybody was there for a really different reason. And for the first time in my career, usually everything was very self-serving. So it was very much about you and how do you move up and how do you make more money and how do you kind of spread your wings. And this was very counterintuitive. This was very much about like a vision and how can we literally connect the world. And it was such a curious kind of opportunity where everyone had done something really cool. And for whatever reason, they were at this company, right? And
so a lot of industry veterans that you had a lot of faith in, a lot of confidence. They had been part of successful companies were there. So it gave you confidence, this concept, and that this would actually succeed.
Well, not even succeed. It was so early. There was when I first got there. I apologize for this. When I first got there, about 30 days in, Facebook had created this thing that has totally transformed the company, and it was called Newsfeed. So before, people would have to go to individual profile pages to see what Charlie Hannigan was up to. Obviously no good, but that's what they would go and see. So now this product change was Newsfeed, and people freaked. So I remember being out there with work, and there were news trucks, and it was right on University Avenue in Palo Alto, and there had been a group that was created that was just shy of 800,000 people that were protesting Newsfeed. And that's a bigger number than those that protested the Vietnam War. So what Zuckerberg was and continued, well, back then at least, I wouldn't even adjust what he's doing now, but back then he was so steadfast in the fact that he knew what kind of experiences people wanted. And he didn't go and say, hey users, what do you want? What would you love to see? Because they didn't know. So Newsfeed, at a juncture right after the launch, totally transformed everything. Transformed growth, transformed connection, and literally accelerated the business to the stratosphere.
And that was how far into your experience there?
That was like 2 months in.
All right, good. So let's start at the beginning. So I often think about what it must have been like in Silicon Valley.
Right.
You and Zuck sitting around drinking cappuccinos
Yeah.
on beanbags, and
Yeah.
you know.
I had Adidas sliders,
Right,
or
yeah.
slides, yeah.
So what was it like? I mean, what was it like in those
Yeah.
early days when there were very few employees
Yeah.
and it was a concept and it's something you're really trying to build?
It was fascinating because I was on the sales side, so they really they looked at Mike Murphy, who is my boss, a great friend of Kathy and I. They looked at the sales team, which was really small, really just as the team, and we coined it to fund innovation. So they only wanted us to go and bring in relationships that we had from the industry, so we could bring in enough revenue so he could go and hire more engineers to build more product variations. So it was fascinating. So it was very counterintuitive. You were at the low side of the totem pole. In many media companies, and Trey can attest to this, the straw that stirs the drink is the revenue that comes in, and they kind of jump through hoops and do a lot of really interesting things for that brand or that partner. And Facebook had no desire to do that. They just wanted to get enough kind of oxygen and resources so they could bring in more really smart people, so they could then think about what's needed to then connect the planet.
And who were the original venture backers, and how much capital were you working with to go out? Because that sounds like a long-term business proposition, like basically selling a concept, innovation, and ad revenues. I'm sure didn't come in overnight from some of these big
for sure
relationships you had.
It was the first round, I guess the pre-seed or angel round, whatever they would call it, was $500,000. Peter Thiel with the Founders Fund, Jim Breyer with Accel Partners.
$500,000.
$500,000, and they eventually went out and raised, obviously a lot of money after that. But it wasn't a marketing or an advertising driven business. When I got there in 2006, I think we ended the year roughly around $18 million in revenue. And then in 2007, it was probably about 115 or so. Today, they're doing $120 billion. Wow. So it had just this exponential. The user growth really started to track out. There were quarters in like 2007 to 2010 where we were growing 50 million users a quarter, which back then was, even today, it's a huge number.
Yeah, and when you reach out to original advertising, is this like, these are relationships like the big Coca-Cola,
Yeah.
GM, and firms like that, and they essentially was call option
It was
on...
it was all relationships. So a great friend of mine at Pepsi, who I'd known for years, in 2000, probably late 2006, early 2007, this whole social ads started to come into play. So it was really just word of mouth. So it would be Charlie and Trey and Chris, love Nike. And if I love that brand and I know you guys, I'm connected. So it really started to work to really drive the business. So a Pepsi or a Coke or Walmart, they started to just place kind of a bet on me or the people who had the relationship. And it was really our whole kind of discussion was around how do we use this technology. For the first time, everything was an IP address. It would be, just there was no identity with a person. So now Facebook, MySpace, if you remember MySpace, they failed because no one was their authentic self. And now Facebook, everybody was their authentic self. So now a brand.
How can you describe the difference?
Yeah, so an IP
authentic
address is just, I mean, John could probably do this way more justice than me, but it's kind of just a bunch of numbers. It's a code, right? So now Facebook is Charlie Hannigan. You live in Darien. You went to Holy Cross. You worked at Xerox selling copiers.
Don't give away all my secrets.
But like you knew these people, and I think it for the first time, and that's what the Facebook at schools were all about. It would be that student, where they're from, and that's what Zuckerberg was trying to replicate and trying to authenticate like human connections. And so from a marketing perspective, these brands finally had this opportunity to use technology to build a really intimate relationship with people, real people, and do it at scale. So they could sit there and say, we can sit there and have a one-to-one relationship, but we could also have many millions of people connected to our brand.
Yeah.
And have an ongoing dialogue.
So I get the adoption at colleges because a lot of us are older, and we went to school, and you would get the I won't say what we called it at Holy Cross, but you would get the book with everyone's pictures, right, and a little
Yes.
bit of the background.
I have a feeling what you called it.
Right, yeah, and so I get the captive audience and using technology to connect. How did the adoption migrate from being captive college students to now everyone from 5 until 95?
Well, if you think about it, so when the company started in 2004, at some juncture, those seniors get into the workforce, and those juniors become seniors, and eventually in the workforce. So they anticipated where these students would go. So they created, at the time, groups. So basically 1,000 of the top companies in the world. And they created groups. So when you would leave a college, you would then jump into a group. And it could be, Morgan Stanley, it could be JP Morgan, it could be Coca-Cola. And then really what the driving force is how do you then now open it up to everybody? Because at that point, you had to have an EDU address. So you couldn't join Facebook if you didn't have an EDU address. And those EDU addresses get shut down at a particular window. 6 months, a year, at some juncture, the university schools just shut them down. So they turned that on. And then what they also turned on, which was really amazing, they had this thing I think it was every Mondays, they had this thing called a hackathon. And they encouraged everyone to participate. And you could only participate if you were actually going to work. And you couldn't work on something that you did as a kind of a job. So they created this app to actually translate the site, and it allowed the company to go from all English to 75 languages. Literally in about maybe 2 weeks, they pushed that, and now the whole world had the potential to use Facebook.
2 weeks.
So it was done in a hackathon.
I can't get them to fix my printer at the office in 2 weeks. How did they push out code to? I mean.
Well, it just showed there were so many smart, computer science men and women there. So, but it was all about innovation, all about creating, never settling for the fact that something is perfect. So they would have these really awesome. Almost like reminders in every office that it would be proceed and be bold. It would be done is better than perfect. fail harder.
Yeah, but I see those at the gym, and I
know.
still don't
Well,
show up.
I know,
mean,
and it's
I don't know
okay.
that was really driving the
I know. Well,
innovation.
maybe you should change gyms. So they're just great reminders that, like, if the product got out there, then you could iterate and make it better. And the same premise existed is if we could translate, the world the site into many languages, then it gave us the chance to actually grow into places like Chile and in parts of Asia, et cetera.
Got it. And was Zuck a big force, big driver, big thought leader, or was it more diverse than that? Because I think most people think of Zuck as like certainly the face of the firm, but the driver of change and innovation.
He 100% drove the vision, no question. He had a few really smart kind of confidants. Chris Cox is still at the company. He's chief product officer. He was a Stanford undergrad and grad computer science AI guy. Wonderful guy. He is there. He's been there since the very beginning. But Zuck knew where he wanted to go and the kind of product.
And what year did the company go public?
2012.
So 6 years after. And at what point did you sit at your desk or wherever you were and say, holy shit, we have really created something that's like amazing and highly valued? Like, when did it hit you and other people that what you had created was going to change the world?
Right. Well, there was this event in 2008 that was not so promising when the world collapsed. So while the growth really was accelerating, when the financial crisis hit, it rolled us way back. So it created a huge degree of uncertainty. So while there was huge numbers and growth and traction, that took at least until 2010 to really gain.
When it hit you, meaning like the advertisers didn't have the money to spend?
Well, just the economy went from a good place to a horrible place really quickly. So brands, instead of testing in this thing called digital or this thing called social, that immediately got retracted.
Right. So on the revenue side, not the adoption side.
The adoption side still grew, but if their plans to go out and raise more capital became more difficult. But it probably was more around 2010 that things really were in a great place. We had a chance to make a profit, but we chose to continually reinvest in the business.
And that was validated because you were raising more capital and they would value it at certain levels, so you all started to recognize the inherent value.
Yep.
So what are the key milestones from sort of like a product standpoint? I always think of Facebook, and then I think, all right, Instagram, right? I can't really, and then of course Oculus, which I don't even know what they do, or Meta, the new name. So what do you think about the, sort of in your mind, what were the key milestones from a, product development?
A few photos. Someone developed this whole notion of tagging. So that was really early on. So tagging allowed people to say, hey, here's the event, we're at the DCA event, here are my friends, we're at this event, and that exponentially created a network effect to when that piece of content got pushed. So that was a really important piece. Newsfeed was a game changer. So people for the first time could see what was going on. Instagram, when Facebook bought Instagram, they literally weren't making a dollar. They didn't have a sales force.
What did they have for users though?
I think they were just shy of 100 million users.
But the demographic was better, right?
The demographic was great, and that was a window when a lot of these companies would get created and they'd accelerate out. And if I had to get in Zuckerberg's head, they saw this traction and they knew they had to take it and buy the company.
They paid a huge
They
premium.
paid $1 billion for no revenue.
And now, where does that fit into, you think, the overall scale of the business, profitability, et cetera?
I don't know where it's a monster part of their e-commerce. So the ability to buy products on Instagram is so. I mean, I do it all the time. I know Kathy does. I mean, it's a phenomenal way for a young brand or even a big brand to put a product in a feed where it's aligned with interests, it's aligned with demographics, and aligned with geographic. So it's spectacular, and it is now this kind of moshing between young people and older people, where Facebook, I think, has just gotten older.
Yeah. Well, hopefully the older people don't kill Instagram like they did Facebook.
I think we're good.
Yeah, okay.
I think
Right.
they're good, not me.
So the way they are able to monetize all this is because you obviously have a lot of information on people.
That's right, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
there's been issues about privacy and about sharing of information. What is the current, status on that?
Yeah.
And, a lot of us don't even know what is shared about our information, and you feel like you're having a conversation, and all of a sudden you'll get an advertisement about something you were just talking about.
Yeah. So we're all exposed.
Right. Yeah.
They used to have these. One of the real power pieces of the advertising side of things was the third-party data. So you used to be able to cross third-party data or a user with third-party data. So it allowed, you could sit there and work with Ford Motor Company and look at like an Axiom or third-party entity and see who's bought cars and really leverage your ability to make an impact for Ford and drive the investment. So those days are over. So when you see a lot of things that Apple is dealing with, they are just trying to protect consumers, thank God, because it became this monster data play for Facebook and Google and lots of people. So I think from a consumer perspective, we finally have kind of protection groups looking out, companies looking out for our best interests. If you see the most recent Apple ad with the iPhone, it's privacy, and like it's a really important thing. If you haven't watched the Social Dilemma, you should. It's been out for a couple years now. It's fascinating. And there's a couple friends of mine that used to be on the product side that speak really loudly about the negative that these big platforms have created in people's lives. Never mind the addiction and all these things that unfortunately our kids are seeing.
Yeah. One of the things that's always been on my mind, and I just have been afraid to ask, is when people send out those messages on Facebook that say, you have to cut and paste this message today, otherwise your privacy and your data will be sold. Does that work, or is that just a
No, I think
a
that's a
scam?
ploy. That's a scam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's why I never did it.
It's it's kind of like the IRS calling you,
Right,
Hanny,
yeah,
and
yeah.
saying, hey,
Right.
you owe taxes. Give us a call back.
Yeah. So, and lastly on this part is Meta, right?
Right.
The Facebook is no longer Facebook.
Right.
What's behind the name change, and where do you think the company goes from here?
I think, in my opinion, I think Facebook was a little bit premature in jumping into Web3. I think the reality is Web 2 is,
Just for the
say,
common
social.
folks like me,
Yeah.
what exactly is Web 2 and Web 3?
So Web 2 is like social.
Okay.
So like Twitter and Facebook and Pinterest, they all kind of created this environment that they would call, say, Web 2, Web 2.0. Web 3 is the kind of the clashing of a digital life and in real life, and it's very, very early, and it's very much like the Wild West. So there's so much more work to be done on it. I think they jumped into it prematurely. I think they created a lot of confusion within the company about the direction of the actual business and the vision. But it's coming. I think it's almost like that company that jumped into social in 2000, like Friendster. If anybody remembers Friendster, that was probably like 2002, 3, 4, and that died on the vine before social even became a thing. So I think Facebook is creating some confusion because brands want to drive their business, brands want to build relationships with customers, they want to build community, and this Web3 is going to take a lot of their time and energy, and I don't think they have like the resources necessarily to dive into it. So there's so much more to come, but at some point, Web3 will be a thing.
Right.
I just don't know when it would be.
Got it. So you work with a lot of really talented
Yep.
people there. Anyone that stands out that you think of as particular mentor, somebody that you think was exceptional at their job that you think had a big impact on you and your career?
I mean, there's a lot. I mean, one is Mike Murphy. We're going to his son's wedding this weekend. He is, I mean, a funny story about Mike. I mean, I almost made like the worst mistake of my entire life. In 2006, I was looking at another job before Facebook, and I actually told Mike Murphy, who John McNair grew up in Concord, Mass. with. I actually told Mike Murphy, I said, Mike, I don't think this Facebook job is the right job for me. And we were on Martha's Vineyard. I know my brother Bobby was up there with his family, and it just shows you the kind of person Mike Murphy is. He goes, do yourself a favor, come back out and meet more people. And he could have easily said, no problem, and like, Arrix is out. And he is such a kind human.
I hope he gets a really good holiday gift every year.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good reminder. But he, every time we'd have these one-on-ones, every time I would see Mike, he lived in Palo Alto, every single time he always led with, how's your family? How's your family? And he almost never talked work. And he's a wonderful human. Sheryl Sandberg, I think in her early days, she got there in 2008. She wasn't in, our world. She was very much in the kind of operational side of Google, and she was awesome. She was just a great fan of the work we were doing. She always asked if she could help. She had a sense of humility that may have kind of lost its way a little bit, but I think she's phenomenal. She always had my back, always, and I'll never forget that. Carolyn Everson, who I worked for at the last couple of years, terrific friend of ours, and she's just a good human. And I think at the core, Facebook was filled with great people. And if I had to take anything away from that, it was the first experience in my life where people really mattered. And it didn't matter whether you had done something before. They just cared about like how we could all collectively move forward and drive the company vision or mission, to where, take one step forward every day. So that part was like phenomenal. So like the people on the overall, it's, I don't know where they stand today. There's probably 60, 70, 80,000 people working there now. And that's a hard thing. Every time you double your employee base, it gets appreciably harder. But man, they nailed the culture, and they nailed the value of people and the respect. They would do one thing, and not to bore you, but twice a year they would have these calibrations where allowed everybody to weigh in on, say, Charlie or me, and both your team and those that were not on your team, but you're connected as a peer. And that was always published. It was always discussed.
Wait, it was published to everyone, or
everybody?
Just to your...
Everybody always knew where you stood. And so if you weren't...
Sounds a lot like Bridgewater and Ray Dalio and Radical Transparency.
Yeah, to a large degree.
You have to have thick skin.
You have to have thick skin, but you also have to be like a empathetic, empowering leader. And if you're I was lucky to have like this group as a group that I worked with, I have to make sure that everybody is getting an ear and I'm listening to them. They're getting a voice if they need something done. And if it was about me, they would make sure that came out in the wash. They would sit there and say, Arrix doesn't care. Arrix doesn't do this. Doesn't do that.
Isn't that what Kathy says?
Look, that's on a different topic. No, you're kidding. But the people were amazing. They were amazing.
Yeah. So eventually you got to the point, the company went public. I'm sure things changed quite a bit. It had grown.
Yep.
What's the catalyst to leave? What was the impetus for that?
There were a lot of engineers who left way before the company went public. A lot of really, really wonderful engineers, and they all left. And Zuckerberg was really open about this, and he said, "It is so okay to leave and embark on a new chapter." And he never thought that Facebook was the end-all, be-all for people. Like to this day, he probably didn't sit there and beg for mercy. Hey, Cheryl, can you stay? Like, he applauds that. So, and I remember a few guys had left, and the things that I love to do were building, creating a team, building the business. It was kind of that uncertainty that I loved, because you just didn't know what tomorrow was going to be all about. But your team could figure out how you could get through it and push forward. And at some juncture, I guess if you did your job well, you kind of get to a point where, like, okay, so like no one needs my help anymore. So now what do I do?
Well, it also gives the opportunity for those people
For sure.
below you to elevate themselves.
The business building was now $1 billion business in the U.S. The team was a couple hundred people. They were all phenomenal, and the nuts and bolts of rolling your sleeves up didn't really exist as much as it did. So I felt like, go out when it's just like on your terms, but amazing. Like, never, every job I had ever left was, oh my goodness, like I can't wait to look for another job.
Right.
But like this was very counterintuitive. And I love the fact that I left that company and never for one day had one negative thing ever about anybody, about anything. And that was, it makes you, just makes you sleep at night, but it just makes you so psyched that those 7 years were so fulfilling. Forget the economics, but there were 7 years really well spent.
Yeah, and you left. Obviously, you took a little time, spent time with family, friends, and I know you've done some different ventures. What was the plan? Were you just like, I just need to rest and take a little time, or did you have specific ideas or an agenda that you wanted to?
I did not have an agenda. The time of year really was when the holidays came and went, and all of a sudden January showed up, I'd usually be on a plane kind of going to, CES in Vegas or, always on the run. And I found myself like, oh my goodness, like I have to do something. I can't sit here and like drive the kids to school. So this good friend of mine, Brian Johnston, who's with Nike and then GoPro's CMO, we started this kind of advisory company. So we'd set out to work with a handful of companies and advise them on either monetization or whatever it might be. And Brian is in Portland, wonderful, wonderful guy. But what I really wanted to do is get back and do something, like operate, build something. And it was Cooper, God bless his soul, like that was the intersection when he got sick.
Cooper was Eddie's older brother that Tom is referring to.
Right. So he got lymphoma. Always been a huge dog lover, and it was kind of this realization that I could reallocate my time and reallocate all my energy and not advise, but actually go and create. And that was.
So when Cooper was sick, you took him to Cornell, and you met doctors and other veterinarians.
Yep.
And what was part of the sort of the story and the regimen that helped?
Everything is totally everything's so interconnected. So we went to Cornell. Kirsten Riley was a referrer to a wonderful vet in Red Bank, New Jersey. Kirsten's from Rumson.
Wow, full
originally.
circle now, Kirsten.
It's unbelievable. Yeah, so she runs our store.
Right?
I mean, it's and Kendra Pope in Red Bank is an advisor in the company. Lindsay Thalheim from Cornell is an advisor in the company. And we got to a point where I remember bringing Cooper down to Red Bank, and she sat on the ground, and it was, usually they go into the vet offices and they flip out. Yeah, at least our dogs do. And
Brady's just
she was, Brady's special. Yeah. The vet, Dr. Pope, talked more about nutrition and more about how we ate, and obviously cared about Cooper. But she goes, when you leave here today, you said you guys eat wonderfully at home. Feed your dog exactly what you're going to have for dinner, and then tomorrow morning feed him the leftovers until you have a prescription, and we're going to make sure that you get that in another, like, say, 10 days. And like that's where the wheel started to move.
And so when did it turn from treating Cooper to you actually thinking, I'm onto something here,
Yeah.
and we could create a business around this.
Yeah, I started to look into it, literally that night. And there were already players like the Farmer's Dog and Nom Nom Now, and a lot of players, a lot of the bigger ones had started in like 2014 to say 15, 16. And I remember in a totally unrelated meeting, I was at Anchorage Capital, Dan Allen's company at the time, and small talk at the very end of the meeting. I go, so like, what else are you guys, what else are you, interested in? And the one guy goes, who was running the meeting, goes, oh my God, I love the human grade dog food space. And I'm like, really? What do you love about it? And he's like, single serve, fresh ingredients, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, that's fantastic. I have to go. Literally, I'm like, I'm out of here. I didn't tell him anything what I was thinking
Right,
about.
but at that time, were any of those companies big enough public that they were investable, or was he talking more out of
They were
concept?
investors in Nom Nom.
And was that a private company at the time? Or?
Nom Nom just got bought by Mars in December, January for $1 billion.
No, so at the time when they were talking about it, it was a private company.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes.
Right.
They didn't mention the name. I kind of figured it out.
And I know that there's a lot of research and that people will spend money on certain things.
Yeah.
And pets are one of them,
Yep.
right? So you
Yeah.
have this, from what I understand, a bifurcation in the market.
Yep.
Where you're going to have people will spend high end, and then you'll have a lot of the sort of pet store type of food. So what kind of research did you do, and what did it support in terms of the growth opportunity in like high end, relatively expensive food for your pets?
Right. There definitely was enough energy in the fresh space. There was already a really good amount of investment happening. And the shift to fresh was very much a thing. It was already, I think at the time, maybe a $2-3 billion business already.
And what market share of total pet?
Total pet, maybe.
Fraction?
Yeah, fraction, 5%, maybe, not even. But it was, I mean, it's like Whole Foods. When Whole Foods started, I think they started in like 1980 in Austin, and it was a one market experience. And at one juncture, when they started to kind of go across the U.S., I think most people are like, oh my God, it's great, fresh, like really great food, but it's so expensive. But no one says it anymore. Granted, Amazon owns them, but that shift to farm to table, that shift to eating well, started a long time ago. And for those that do it, live like a really amazing, healthy life. And
Right.
their inflammation, their digestion, all these things that drive health and wellness are, except for drinking beers and wine and things like that.
Right.
But
In
it
all
puts them in a really good place. And when we were developing this freeze-dried raw product, there's a doctor who's helping us still, Dr. George Fahey from University of Illinois, goes, a dog's gut is identical to a human's gut. So whatever you think about how people live their lives in health and wellness, it is absolutely exactly the same for a dog. So he helped us create a product that is around digestive health and gut health and probiotics, prebiotics and ingredients that are wonderful for,
Right. Did you mention to the folks what one of the appetizers or hors d'oeuvres was tonight?
Oh yeah, so the chicken cups, the lettuce cups. Thank you, Holly, for doing that. And sorry for the dog's behavior earlier. The lettuce cups are a variation of our chicken recipe. So we did it. So the things that we are cooking in South Norwalk, it is just like amazing fresh food. So we wanted to have the caterer create a version of it. It's just to show you like this is stuff that if we all ate, chicken lettuce cups all the time, one would be fairly boring, but we'd probably be pretty healthy.
Yeah. One of Tom's best Instagram stories is when he's in the kitchen in South Norwalk and he's eating the dog food as they're creating it.
Yeah. Just need a little Cholula or A1.
So the early days were pretty funny.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us stopped by your house and saw the food prep. Tell us about going from the concept, the recipe, to actually creating it, packaging it, shipping
Yeah.
it to people?
There's so many mistakes in between. One, we would, thanks to Kathy, allowed us to. There's 3 amazing humans that I know. Catherine. There's probably a whole bunch of people that know Teresa, Sonia, Luis Enriquez. They've been a part of a lot of families for a long time. They would come into our house on Wednesdays and Thursdays and cook from 8 a.m. to about 6 p.m. And I started off buying the food on like Instacart, which was like the dumbest thing ever. And then I would, get the gumption and go to like Stop and Shop, and I'd buy like the ground turkey and the broccoli and the cauliflower, the carrots, etc. And then I finally was really bold and went down to Restaurant Depot in Portchester, and like that's where all the restaurants shop. So we're finally, going in an interesting direction. But we got our recipe done and formulated by a vet nutritionist, and we would sit there, and Sonia would write down, she would record every single batch that she would cook in her composition book. So if you looked at it today, every page is like, June 6th, it was 200 pounds of turkey, 400 grams of this, that, the other thing. And she would kind of go through and how we'd allocate it into our pouches. So then I bought a vacuum sealer. So we would then sit there at the end of the day and put the food in. We'd weigh it, and it would be like, and the kids would come home from school, and I know Annie always does it. She doesn't mince words, and she'd be like, "This house smells so disgusting," because we would use our steamer to steam the broccoli and the cauliflower. So the waft was everywhere forever. And the fly, so this time of year was a bad. So it started like January 2019, and then we did in our kitchen until we couldn't find commercial space. So we went all the way until COVID. We had a commercial space lease done. It was being built out. COVID happens, and I remember sitting there, I'm like, now what do we do? And the kids were now home. Other than me being like a Fauci freak. I remember we were having dinner, and I said, I think I'm just going to shut the company down. Like, I'll just shut it down, and then we'll restart it when like this stuff blows over. And I think it was Sam that said, why? You got to be kidding me. You're going to shut it down? After all this like effort, you're going to shut it down? And I'm like, that's a great point. And I texted David Nelson from 1020, because they were closed, and I said, David, can I cook in your kitchen? And he goes, absolutely not. But Jimmy Sullivan at Rye Bar and Grill is closed, and I'm sure he'd love for you to cook. So we cooked at the Rye Bar and Grill from late March until early June 2020. But it was those 3. Like, I went down to South Carolina for 6 weeks, but Sonia, Luis, and Teresa came in every single week and cooked. They would create the pouches, and they would get in their cars and drive it back to our garage and put it in their freezers. Like, they are like the most unbelievable humans that really have created all the value in the company.
So now you have commercial space. You obviously expanded your client base. We see your
customer number one.
Yeah,
you want me to
exactly.
say
Yeah.
There you go.
You do great marketing.
Yeah.
And what is the growth strategy? How do you go from cooking in your kitchen a couple of years ago to actually creating a real company that has value, that you can either you can do a lot of different things at that point.
One, you found yourself in a supply chain business, which I have no background. So we had to try to figure that out. But we obviously started with fresh meals, so we cook that now in South Norwalk. We still do that. We now have 2 points of distribution called 3PLs. One is in Ohio, and one is out in Nevada. And what we do is we cook, and then we push our product into those locations. So when someone from, say, Chicago comes in and buys our meals, that product is getting pushed or delivered from Ohio. And same with Nevada for, say, California out west. So we've pushed into freeze-dried raw, which is an amazing product. We're going to come out with a chicken flavor in mid-July. We're getting into bone broth. We're starting for our subscribers July 1st, which I love this whole thing about like this sphere, this circle of dog wellness. We started with nutrition. We're getting into wellness services, so we're going to have telehealth or televet. So it will allow people that may sit there and say, my dog is a little slow, not moving around that much. You can get on now this software and either do a live chat or a scheduled video call. It's not to circumvent a vet, but it's to give people peace of mind that, okay, my dog's shaking their ears. Maybe it is an ear infection, so I will take him to the vet. It is a really important kind of step towards rounding off wellness. And we're going to get into supplements. We are in July, we're getting into Petco online and Amazon as well.
Wow. Well, we could talk all night about Facebook and Get Joy, but we do want to take some questions from the audience. But one last question. We are thankful to our sponsors here at the DCA, but and this is particularly interesting for you because Tom grew up in New Canaan and Kathy grew up in Greenwich. So I hope Darien wasn't just a compromise, but
it kind of was.
Yeah.
But it worked out. It worked out.
So what is it about town that drew you here and that has led you to raise your family and thrive here?
One, it was a compromise, so we just kind of said this is in between our parents. But more importantly, we love so many of the people that we've met over the years. We moved here in 1997 over on Phillips Lane. We've just met so many people. That's where we met the Huffords way back in the day. And the schools are wonderful. I think on the overall, people are just good people. They care. It's a great community. The school quality is amazing. It has evolved, but God, we've had so much fun since we've been in Darien, and it has allowed us to have our kids grow up in what we believe is a wonderful part of the world. It doesn't have it has its faults at times, but there's humility. There's good humans. There's people who care about them all throughout town, and a lot of towns in this area, kind of are in the same pack. But we love Darien.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
Well said. All right, so I think we're going to take some questions from the audience. We have you have to speak into the microphone because we have some folks live streaming from around the globe that are
right. Yeah. There's more people on the live stream, right? Yeah.
So as you think about dog food in human terms and some of the evolutions and what humans are doing, are you thinking about things like CBD and gummies and dispensaries for dogs?
CBD for sure. I'm not sure about THC, but we have there's a CBD, human grade CBD pet sprinkle that is wonderful. He should probably have had some before he came today. But the way we think about it, John, is what if we want to become a brand that is kind of all-encompassing for wellness. We started with nutrition, and if wellness services like vet services or even pet insurance, these other kind of ways that people can kind of enjoy their pet and become a better pet owner, pet parent, we want to be in that business. So supplements, as long as they're great quality and they speak to health and wellness, there's so much that we can do. We're a total small, scrappy company, but the industry is really efficient, and the industry is very legacy driven, and that's great for us, and not great for the players who have been in it for a long time. So you can innovate. We can jump into televet services because of a software provider that we built a relationship, and we can get into the same business that Chewy's in. So we can start to play way bigger because we are diversifying the things that we're trying to bring to market.
That's exciting. Thank you.
Sorry, so you were were talking about Amazon and Whole Foods and how they started out small. Would you put your product in Whole Foods in like the shipping category? So just how much does it cost to ship dog food
Right.
in fresh? And
Yep.
could I pick it up at my local store and save a lot of money?
That's a great question. One, it's expensive to ship. So especially our fresh meals are frozen, so that weight. But it's okay. So we're willing to, and we're a very small player. So unless you have scale and you're shipping, tons and tons of boxes every day, your pricing is not a favorable way of going about it. So that's why these 3PLs, these points of distribution, they're great because we piggyback on their kind of pricing structures, which is wonderful for us. And like Nantucket, we were talking earlier, we're thinking about, if someone on Nantucket said, I want to buy your food, could we have a delivery on Nantucket, which I think makes a ton of sense. There's a great company based out of Stanford called Point Pickup that is doing that last mile delivery. We are not there yet by any means, but there are definitely some really creative, efficient ways that we can make our customers happier and more, at ease with timeliness of deliveries and save us on the cost side.
And there is a store at Darien, so you actually can
Yeah,
buy it
yeah.
in town here.
So, and like I did Hello Fresh, and I
Yeah.
just felt bad about the
Right.
amount of packaging at some point. So
No, great question.
I don't think this is on, but I would like to know how you came up with the name and what your second choice was.
The first name was, we were talking in our kitchen, and Kathy came up with the name. And it really is, I think, hopefully everyone here is a dog owner, lover. And Kathy goes, what about joy? Like, it's what these creatures provide all of us. They give us so much unconditional love. They are here for like coping. They're here for, just enjoyment. And that was what we ran down the road with initially. And then it ran into an issue with the trademark. So a trademark was lapsed, long story really short, it was settled. And our URL at the time was Get Joy Food. So it actually worked in our favor to change the name to Get Joy, because it allows us now to do so much with it. So we're pushing into like a lifestyle play, and the translation of Get Joy can mean so many things, right? It could just be when you take your dog on a hike, on vacation, sitting on a couch, lying, they sleep on your bed or on the side of the bed. It's about what these creatures do for us. And if you're Nom Nom, you can't necessarily be a lifestyle brand because you're just in the business of selling dog food. And if we do it right, we'll be in the wellness business, and hopefully the lines get a little bit more blurred over time between people and dogs.
I don't have a dog. Sorry.
That's all right.
But
You can take Eddie. You can take Theo for a couple days. He's really well behaved.
but feel like I'm surrounded by people whose dogs have had to be put down lately.
Right.
And I know it's horrible, horrible, and traumatic. So I'm wondering, as humans are living longer, who's doing research into how to help dogs live longer? Is that a thing out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very much a thing, and it's not too. There's tons of research, and there's sadly the incidence of, say, cancers in dogs is frightening. This breed sadly is in the worst position. And when we created the company, there are 3 pillars that you could think about as industries: nutrition, it's genetics, and environment. And the easiest one to control is nutrition, and that's the one we decided on. Environment's really hard. They could be, it's the things that you put on your lawns. It's just, there's so many things that are out of a pet owner's control. The breeding with genetics, when you have all these crossbreeds, it's probably taking its toll as well. So one of the drivers for us was to create a company that really could affect the lives of these animals. And I believe that when, just like us, if we all ate great and if our dogs ate great, we're giving them the best chance to live their best life. And if they live to 10 or 12 or 15 or 19, maybe in a bunch of years, if the shift continues to eating great nutrition versus, and I'll give you the example. Remember the TV dinner days? So your parents would be like, hey, we're going out to dinner, but the TV dinner is in the oven, so take it out and that's your dinner. That's the same shit as kibble. Kibble is just highly processed, terrible food. Full stop. If you look on the back, there are products or ingredients called fish meal, meat meal, pea meal. They're not even ingredients, and they're made out of powder and condensed, and they're sprayed with so. The humanization of the pet has been a phenomenal thing to follow because they are such a big part of our lives. They really are. And some dogs are the child for a family. Some dogs are there for coping. Some dogs are just there because you're a dog lover. And I think more and more people are taking more interest to treat their animal just like they would treat their child. So if you think about the TV dinner scenario, so if Kathy and I ate great food, but we gave our kids TV dinners, there's a really kind of crazy disconnect there. And now most homes are eating way better than they ever have. So now it's time to push it just a little bit further. If we call these guys our kids, let's treat them like your kid. And nutrition is the best place to start to affect their lives. It's not going to take the cancer out of play, sadly, but I think they're going to be in a position to live their healthiest, best life versus eating poor nutrition. You bet.
Hi, Tom.
Hi, Amy.
So much of the message that we hear for humans is eat well and exercise well.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm listening to this and I think of Pet Joy, I think of, so we're feeding them this incredibly healthy food, and then we also need to get the leash and do what they love to do.
Right.
And walk them and really exercise them for a long life for our dogs, which is what we all want.
Right.
So I'm just thinking out loud, is there a way to either have an event or a marketing spin or some kind of thought about, eat well and then, I don't know, walk your dog,
Yeah.
Think about that next thing that we all need to do is walk our dogs. They need their exercise. I just think.
No, I totally agree. And it's, I just think it's about people realizing that they have a responsibility with their animal, whether it be a small little dog or a 100-pound dog. And the responsibility lies in the fact that they expect you, they trust you to take care of them. And not just feed them and say, see you later and I'll be back in 8 hours, 10 hours, but they need to be, in this case, these guys need to exercise all the time. Yeah. And I think it's a really important thing. So if you think about if you flip that, so if someone was not in great shape and they knew they had to walk their dog, they're actually helping themselves more than the dog. And I think there's a dynamic there that we're trying to strike that chord and not make it this chore about I got to walk my dog. It is enjoy health and wellness with your animal because it's great for both. There's a lot of things that are happening with, there's a great brand called Viore out of California, and they have great clothing, and they do these yoga sessions, but with dogs. And it's so smart. The clothing's amazing. It's a really edgy brand, direct-to-consumer brand, And I think that's just an example of just go do stuff with your animal. If it gets you going and them going, like, it's a win.
Yeah, spread that healthy
Yeah,
message.
for sure.
Just wanted to
Yeah.
mention that.
No, it's great, and it's one of the things that we did with this metaverse, this dog zone, and it's really about people learning and kind of collaborating. And how do I learn something from you about how you walk your dog? You may sit there and say, I have a golden retriever, and you run your dog, and I don't, and maybe I should run him more. It just, the more people share, and the more people can kind of make their own household better, and hopefully their community better. So the unspoken is, even towns like Darien has a really inappropriate amount of space for dogs. So the growing population is very real. There's over 100 million dogs in the country. 70 plus million households have dogs, and there's just no space. And there's no space to let them do what they're supposed to do, is like be off leash and go run. And granted, there's issues about dogs getting in fights, and we saw a little bit of that issue earlier having a cocktail. But there's a lot to be done if we really care about making their lives better.
It seems like a good message for your brand.
Yes, yes.
Gosh, we
Thank
could
you.
be here all night, but we have time for one more question. This is Ashley from A Little Something White.
Thank you. Well, first off, I do have a dog who's a very recent Get Joy customer, and I have to thank you because he went
Awesome.
from eating, not eating his food and chewing up everything else, sprinkler heads. We found scissors after winter in the
Ooh.
yard, but now he still does that, but he does eat his food. So
Good. That's good.
That's a huge relief.
It's a step in the right direction.
But my question is, what are the one or two things that, if you could go back in establishing and growing Get Joy, what are the 1 to 2 things that you would do differently?
I wish we probably hired people faster or sooner. It took us a long time to bring expertise into the company. So we hired just 2 months ago someone who is in the pet space, who's now working like on our R&D and products and things. A lot of it was almost too intuitive and reactive. So I wish we had done that. I think the business overall has got just so much tailwind, no pun intended, but we probably could have moved faster. We probably could just have, accelerated a lot of our thinking and tried to, create better messaging. We did not have great content for a long time, and I think we're in a way better place now than we were, even 6 months ago. So the thing that I really I'm personally psyched about is it's easy not to jump into these things, but I'm glad I did. It's been so fun. It's a total passion of mine and Kathy's and our kids, and like all of you guys are wonderful supporters, so I'm very grateful. But it's just so fun, and who knows where it goes, but we're ultimately building a community that hopefully people will bring others into the community. Not so much even about Get Joy, but just about wellness and people that care more than they did before. So that's if we did that and Get Joy didn't really do a whole lot after that, it would be phenomenal because the dogs win. Yes.
I think you tired them out. Look at those.
I know.
Look at those sweet guys.
I know. I told you, Amy, they'd eventually just chill out.
Thank you very much. Well, what a great way to conclude our series. And I just wanted to thank you guys for those of us lucky enough to have dogs. I think you reminded all of us why we love them so much. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Amy.
And I wanted to mention these guys were kind enough, Tom was kind enough to bring, I guess I should call them doggy bags.
There you go. Yep.
But they're goodie
Yep.
bags for each one of you, so we can hand them out. Thank you, Tracy. We'll hand them out.
There's a treat in there, and it's a lot of you guys already have these freeze-dried organ meat, which dogs absolutely devour and love. There's a trucker hat for your kids will probably steal it, but and then there's a discount code. So thank you so much.
Thank
really,
you.
really appreciate it. Thanks, Hanny.
All right.
Appreciate it. Good buddy.